we'll now open up to questions and comments that we've been receiving throughout. And I'd like to welcome back, alongside David, Clare, Simon and Cormac. Before I go to the list of questions and some of the things we've been getting through, Clare, before we move to the questions from the audience, I think it'd probably be worthwhile clarifying the roles of ESB Networks and ESB e-cars. Would you be able to explain, please?
Yes, happy to do that. So, and it is, it's not unusual that sometimes this confusion does arise. So just to be clear, ESB Networks does not own, operate or maintain any electric vehicle charging infrastructure. We're precluded by the Clean Energy Package. That's not a role for us. Our main responsibility and role in the electrification side is to provide the electricity network connections for the EV charging infrastructure and the EV charging charge points, be that, and there are a number of EV charging infrastructure developers operating in the market in Ireland. There is a business completely ring-fenced and separate from ESB Networks within ESB Group that is referred to as ESB e-cars, and that is an infrastructure developer, and it's also an EV infrastructure, charging infrastructure developer, and it also, I suppose, provides charging services to its customers. But it's just one of ESB Networks customers. We have a range of them, like Circle K, Ionity, Maxall, so there's a range of them. So I suppose when perhaps we see that there's a comment that ESB aren't interested in a charging point, that's not us. That's ESB Networks have to provide that service to all our customers. That's more, maybe another part of ESB, but just to differentiate there.
Thank you. Thanks, Clare. I'm going to go to you, Clare, again for one of the first questions. Was actually something that David touched on as he wrapped up in relation to the 2030 targets and how ambitious they are. So this is a question from Simranjeet Singh. And Simran says, we have not been able to meet targets to 2020, and we know there's a long road now ahead to 2030. What are our plans to come back on track and make sure that we will meet our targets? So if you could give a view on that, please.
Yes, well, I suppose ESB Networks' role, we're an enabler of the electrification, and the climate action plan and the programme for government have set out the targets, and so for us it's about making sure that as and when that demand and increase happens, that we can support it and enable it. There are a variety of other groups within Ireland, government entities such as SAI and others, whose role it is to promote electrification. So for us, I suppose, is that we work that balance where we're not a market player, but we're about enabling and facilitating. So in terms of the level of ambition for the targets, I think the trajectory is very clear to everyone of the rationale, and why it's been done, because of climate targets. And I suppose it's not really for me to comment on what the government has set. I suppose it's just for me to say, well, if that's where we're aiming for, then ESB Networks wants to make sure that we're enabling that, and we're going to be, we're not seen as any blocker to that. So perhaps some of the others on the panel might have a view, maybe perhaps even Simon from the EV owner side. Yeah. I know they've been doing work to persuade and put the case for that.
Maybe Simon, you'd like to come in and just give a view?
Yeah, I mean, obviously at the moment, ESB e-cars would be the predominant network, EV charging network operator in Ireland. So, and obviously that is a separate part of the ESB organisation to ESB Networks. There are, obviously competition is healthy, so that we see that we get good pricing. What we see at the moment actually is that ESB cars is the most competitively priced public charging. So other operators coming in like Ionity are actually backed by some of the manufacturers. So the manufacturers that have an interest in providing charging infrastructure for their vehicles that will arrive on these shores undoubtedly over the coming years, they want to make sure, as Tesla have done, that they have reliable charging infrastructure. So the pricing will be built in when you purchase those cars, or like fueling plans, for example, for public charging, and that will be part of the situation as well. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on, and we want to see competition. And yeah, I can see from the point of view of David and how he thinks that hydrogen might have a role in the future. But if we look at what the car manufacturers are actually building and planning and going to be offering, hydrogen may have a role in haulage, for example, but it won't have a role in cars, unfortunately. So petrol retailers or forecourts will need to embrace the installation of public charging infrastructure. But yeah, it needs to be done at the right pace and at the right level.
Thank you, Simon. And another question for you, Simon, just that came in as well. There's a query around, is there a public repository for the data on EVs in each county or electoral division that you could advise the audience?
In terms of sales figures and things like that, or what
I guess SIMI would have those.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So probably SIMI is the source of information. Actually, I'm asking and coming to the conclusion with you. Yeah, it does. It's not more directive than that on the data. So we can see sales.
Yeah, we publish that data on our website monthly, so we can see the trajectory of EV sales, and we include imports in that as well. Okay. But yeah, that we take the raw data from SIMI because they're the ones that compile that information.
Great. So either your website or SIMI directly will give that data. So question here next to move to Cormac next, please. A question from Chloe Ní Morley. My Irish is being struggled here. Congratulations to DCC, first of all, on their brilliant work in tracing, monitoring and collating the data of work carried out in their region. Cormac, would you know if a local authority such as Galway would have staff members in similar roles to your own to support smaller communities such as Inisheer and to help them follow suit in tracking energy developments and so on? Would you be aware of what's happening more nationally?
Yes, well, there is DSE. I have Sustainable Energy Communities scheme up and running, and we work very closely in Dublin. I can give the Dublin example. We work very closely with Codima, who helped us to project manage that project. And there are a range of sustainable energy communities right across the Dublin region. And what we're doing at the moment is we are facilitating the procuring of consultants to help each community prepare master plans. So to look at their area, what is being consumed, where the larger assets that they have, and to come up with a plan to help them reach their targets. So I can't speak for Galway County Council, but there certainly are people who would be in similar roles and they would have similar sort of climate action, energy management roles in Galway County Council. I don't know off the top of my head who that person is directly, but there would be a similar type of approach right across the whole local authority sector.
Okay, very good. Thanks for that. A question for David next. So the hydrogen angle. So this is a question from Shane Prendergast. Shane asks, you mentioned you believe hydrogen is a future and you don't know where the financial or the money side of it will come to achieve the EV targets that are set nationally. So would you have an idea around the costs, David, for installing hydrogen by comparison, even if it is for the more heavy-duty arrangements? So the installation of hydrogen refueling stations and where you think that type of finance or backing could come from? Have you examples from elsewhere, perhaps, that you could share with the audience?
Well, hydrogen stations have been done in other parts of Europe and the Nordic countries. I just see, and again, it's a personal view, I just see batteries as a stopgap, unless they do get to the stage, as Simon says, where you can have a battery in your car, you can take it into your house, you can charge it at home, etc. If that battery technology comes on in the next 5 to 10 years, that could happen. I just see so much effort has been pushed by UK government and others down the hydrogen route to replace the gas industry. I just see a spin-off from that could be into vehicles, especially as Simon alludes to, the larger HGVs, etc. I just don't see electricity will have the power to do that. And I just think hydrogen will appear on the scene at some stage. I just think there are so many difficulties around battery production and where all the bits and pieces are coming from across the world. I just see difficulties on that in the next few years. Hydrogen technology is ramping up. We have gas manufacturers who have hydrogen-ready boilers. The issue is the gas network. It's very older in GB compared to Ireland. And I think they're struggling with how to get hydrogen through the pipelines to homeowners. But once that happens, and I do think it will happen, I do think hydrogen will have a role to play. I have no idea of costs or where we are with that, but I just see in the back of my mind hydrogen as a player in the next 10 years.
Very good. Thanks for that, David. And then just speaking about kind of the investment angle, question for you, Clare, around the LV network in Ireland. So how much is it forecasted to cost to upgrade the LV network in Ireland specifically? And that will enable us then to have 100% renewable power, heat, and the uptake scenarios that we're all looking at in terms of the climate action plan.
Yes, well, the CRU in their determination for the next, what I call the next 5 years from 2021 to 2025, they have made their decisions around that. And I suppose maybe just to address, David's concern as well. So that our investment profile for the next number of years to cater for that has been covered by that decision. And the CRU would be very supportive of that, so that we wouldn't be seeing any sort of significant increase in the tariff side as a result. But from an LV system readiness perspective, we have 130 million capex program underway at the moment, and then we also have another capex program which is looking at converting our 10 kV network, medium voltage network, to 20 kV, which again will be able to provide us with that increased capacity as we move up the higher voltage levels to deal with the increased demand. But there's also then a number of projects, as I pointed out, around our innovation and on our R&D, our active system management project, and very much the LV network visibility piece. So there's funding in place. You know, we have the approval from the CR for all of those aspects that will support electrification. But I think also it's probably important to note that the methodology, and I touched on that in my presentation, we're adopting this FIMS model, you know, and this is about and I sometimes call it the sort of the Goldilocks type solution, right? So we're trying to get in there to invest at the right time, the right place, without being in there and over gold plating or over investing in that state. So the approach that we've adopted, where we're using, there is a lot of uncertainty around the forecasting, the uptake. That's something that we found in our public consultation as well. And so for us, it's about trying to use innovative data analytics techniques, any available data that we can use to try and help us identify where there's potential hotspots, then going in and putting in the monitoring equipment to provide us with that empirical evidence that there is something there that gives us that heads up to say, right, now it's time to go in before there's further, before there's a problem or constraint. And so for us, that's very much I suppose trying to plan that in a very cost-effective and efficient way. But just to sort of reassure that we have our plans in place and we have our approvals with regard to that funding from the CRU.
Great, thank you, Clare. I have one final question, and it's probably for all of our speakers today, but I'm actually going to go to Simon, because Simon, your presentation had an element of education and I suppose learning in it. So the question is, what are the opportunities for the development of the likes of new apprenticeships or indeed education or training that you see emerging in this space?
I think there are great opportunities, and I attended a workshop with the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment 2 weeks ago, where they're looking at this, and I think there's going to be a big switch from, if you like, doing a lot of the dirty jobs on cars, like changing oil and things like that, to more jobs where you need electrical skills. You shouldn't be touching an EV unless you know how to handle that high power system, but also telematics and internet type skills as well. So there is a great opportunity. I think the challenge is going to be, do we see that as something that we can transition mechanics from and to those skills, or do we need a different set of skills at the early development stage and education that people, that they need to develop before they get into the workplace? And I think as well, we need to look at how those people will be remunerated, because those skills will be more valuable skills in other areas as well. So they'll need to be better paid than mechanics are at the moment. So yeah, there's definitely a great opportunity there, but there's a lot of work to do in enabling that. But it's good to see that the thinking is starting and it's happening.
Yeah, agreed. Well, thank you for sharing. Sorry, Claire, you have...
Yeah, I suppose I might, if I could be cheeky enough, just to sort of mention just on this topic. I mean, the whole area of climate action is a really significant area. I think it's going to form part of the economic recovery for Ireland and the engagement over the next number of years. So just to plug out, this is a really exciting time to be in the industry. ESB Networks are actually running their apprenticeship recruitment program at the minute. If you go onto our website or any of our LinkedIn, I know this is a shameless plug, but actually, if you've sons and daughters, nieces and nephews, this is the industry to be getting involved in terms of supporting this electrification and helping us meet our climate action goals. So check that out. Thanks.
Using this as a platform to recruit the next generation. Anyway, a couple of things for me. So we obviously didn't get to ask all of the questions, but thank you very much for sharing them. I think there's been some really interesting insights and learning shared today. The copies of the presentations will be emailed to everyone. So there was certainly a question for me on that. So look, just as the session draws to a close, I'd just like to thank each of our speakers again very much, and indeed to you for joining us this morning. The next webinar session in the Power of the Change series is going to take place in April time. For further information and details, that will be shared shortly in relation to that. And I do hope you can join us again for that session. So in the meantime, please take care and stay safe. Thank you very much.